Hey guys, and welcome to today's video on scaling your training volume over time. The information in this video is going to be completely directed towards hypertrophy, muscle growth. However, the methods and principles we'll look at should be applicable to most things. So basically, I'm going to attempt to break down the topic of periodization into something understandable and applicable into your own training. I feel this is a topic which is massively overcomplicated online, mostly by people who are trying to sound smarter than they are. But whether you are a beginner, intermediate, or even an advanced lifter, there's definitely going to be some information in here which will help simplify things that you'll be able to apply to your own training. So listen up. First off, it's important to understand what training volume actually is. Simply put, your training volume is the sets times the reps times the weight that you are lifting. So if you were to do 3 sets of 10 reps on the bench press using 60 kilograms, your total volume for that exercise would be 1,800 kilograms. If you increase any one of the 3 factors, sets, reps, or weight, then the volume will increase, given that the other 2 factors remain unchanged. So something very common you'll see with beginner lifters and even into the intermediate and advanced is they'll write up their workout program, they'll get their structure in place, and then they will just follow that week by week by week by week. So it could be 3 sets of this, 10 reps, 2 sets of this, 12 to 15 reps, whatever. They'll find their way and they'll progress. They'll stick to that, but try and progress the weight each week. Now, this isn't bad, and it is a lot better than not following a workout program at all. I'm looking at you, muscle confusion guy. But from a volume and progressive overload standpoint, it could definitely be better. Number 1, adding weight to the bar is the least efficient way of increasing your training volume. Out of the 3 volume variables that you can adjust, weight is the smallest one. So if you increase your weight on the bar by 1.25 or 2.5 kilograms per week, that is nothing compared to adding extra sets or reps. Not that increasing weight isn't an amazing way to induce more intensity and overload to your training. It's amazing for progression, but why not make the most out of the other 2 variables as well? And number 2, strength increase slows down dramatically. Sure, in your first year you might be able to consistently add weight week by week, if that, but once you're into your 3rd, 4th, 5th year of training, your strength increase is going to slow down a lot. So there'll be weeks and weeks and weeks where you're doing the same thing every week if you're just relying on strength progression. Whereas if you look to increase these reps and sets when it's built into the program like this, you're guaranteeing a progression. So why scale volume over time? The main reason for scaling volume over time is to get progressive overload built into your training program. As I'm sure you're all aware, progressive overload is simply increasing the amount of stress placed on your body over time to ensure that you continually adapt to the new stresses rather than getting used to the same thing over and over again. This ensures that you are continually progressing rather than plateauing, and is the absolute key to muscle growth. One very easy way of achieving progressive overload is to simply continually add volume to your training. So, by building a program that naturally scales volume in a way that makes sense, you're pretty much guaranteeing your own success, all other things being considered. Periodization can be many things, including blocks of strength-specific training, endurance training, hypertrophy-specific training, etc., etc. But it can also be broken down into volume landmarks, periods of low volume and periods of high volume, and everywhere in between. This is extremely important for working your way through the optimal ranges of volume rather than just staying still in one place. From the minimum effective dose to the maximum effective dose, into an overreaching phase, and then managing your recovery after that, resensitizing you, getting yourself ready for the volume in the next training block. So without getting too complicated, let's get into the actual programming. There are 4 key volume landmarks to be aware of, and these are what we'll be basing your training program on. Credit where credit's due, the abbreviations and numbers used here are from Mike Israetel of Renaissance Periodisation. Those guys and him in general are an amazing source of information, so I'd highly recommend checking those out. Firstly, we have MV, which stands for maintenance volume. This is the minimum amount of training volume required to maintain your current condition. After this is MEV, standing for minimum effective volume. This is the minimum amount of volume required for you to make progress in your training. Note that progress at this point won't be optimal or as fast as it could be, but it is enough to get you to progress to some degree. Next up is MAV, and this stands for maximum adaptive volume. This is generally a volume range rather than a specific number, and this is the amount of training volume which will allow for optimal progression. And lastly is MRV, maximum recoverable volume. This is where recovery demand from training becomes too high to allow for sustainable progression. The maximum amount of volume you can do while still recovering, basically. The actual set numbers for this will vary dramatically on an individual basis due to factors such as training age, gender, genetics, and more. They'll even vary muscle group to muscle group. That being said, generally accepted range for minimum effective volume and maximum adaptive volume is around 10 to 20 hard sets per muscle group per week. So that is a good range for us to be working with. The goal of your training program will be to work you through this range to allow for optimal progression. It should also take into account periods of deload where your volume and intensity is taken right down. This will allow for lots of recovery and resensitization ready for the next block of training. And personally, I like to include a period of overreaching as well, but we'll get into that in the next section. Okay, so this is how we're going to plug in the information we just looked at into your training program. First off, wherever you are right now, I want you to finish that block of training, this period of training, with a 1 week deload. Like I said, reducing the volume, reducing the intensity to get you nice and recovered, ready for this next program that we're going to go into. This will make the lower volume sections of the next program more beneficial and just get you ready for the next bout of intensity. Now, with the first week of your new program, you'll be hitting 8 weekly sets per muscle group, ideally 4 sets split into 2 workouts. So this could be like a push-pull legs routine where you're hitting chest, shoulder and tricep workout twice a week, or this could be an upper lower, however you like to split it up. Two workouts per muscle group per week, 4 sets per workout. So in each workout you'd have 4 sets per muscle group. Now each week add 1 set per muscle group per workout, which will add a total of 2 sets volume to each muscle group per week. This means that the second week of your program will have 10 weekly sets, the third week will have 12 weekly sets, the fourth week will have 14 weekly sets, and so on. Continue with this same progression scheme for the next 9 weeks and then deload on the 10th week of the program. This will get you to a total set volume of 24 sets per muscle group on the 9th week, 12 sets per workout. Yeah, it really is that simple. Now, I know that 8 sets per week per muscle is below MAV for most people, and 24 sets per week is above MRV for most people, which I did say not to exceed. However, this is the overreaching phase that I like to incorporate. If you're pushing volume and intensity extremely hard to the extent of 24 sets per muscle group per week for extended periods of time, then yes, you definitely will be impeding your progress due to recovery demand just being too high. And of course, you're putting yourself at a greater risk of overtraining. However, there are benefits to short bouts of overreaching, which then, when strategically programmed with rest periods afterwards, adequate rest periods, you get into a phase of supercompensation where you see your results dip and then super compensate back up and above where they would have been without the overreaching phase. The last 2 weeks of this program format will have you pushing volume above from where you can realistically recover from. This is the overreaching stage. Then, directly after this, you have a 1 week deload to allow you to focus on the much needed recovery. And then furthermore, after the 10th week deload, your program resets back to 8 sets per muscle group, which is enough of a stimulus to begin progressing again, but it's such low stress and that it's enough for you to completely recover, benefiting from the super compensation stage shown from overreaching. When you reset back to 8 sets per week, you aren't just going back to where you were in the first block of training, as that wouldn't be progressive overload. After your 10-week program, your first 10-week program, if you've done things right, you should be better, you should be stronger. So that means that when you go back into your second block of programming, 8 sets from your first training plan will be less volume than 8 sets in your second block of training, as there'll be more weight on the bar. Remembering that weight on the bar is a factor of your total volume, so by that increasing, you're increasing your volume when comparing week 1 of program 1 compared to week 1 of program 2. And there we have it, guys. As you can see, the actual structure is super simple and you have it completely laid out for you here. All you need to do is choose your exercises and split and arrange them in a way that is effective, makes sense, and that you enjoy. If you have any questions on this topic at all, please do let me know in the comment section below. And of course, if you did enjoy this video, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content and give it a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next one, see you later, guys.